How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video we're going to focus on this next tropical disturbance that's expected to develop off the east coast and determine if it'll develop into tropical storm Bonnie and potentially bring impacts along the United States east coast next week. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current computer models, more specifically the European model at this time, and you see that at around the 141 hour mark we do see a well-defined low pressure system just off the southeast coast at this time, with a millibar pressure right around 1001 millibars, which is strong enough to be considered a tropical storm. And while it isn't necessarily an extremely strong tropical storm, it's still definitely a concern for the east coast headed into next week. So the European model is a little bit more lenient on developing this, but to first determine if this does have a chance of developing, we need to see the factors that will lead to this tropical disturbance developing in the first place, because that will determine the future of this low pressure system and to determine if this will develop into tropical storm Bonnie. So to really show you guys what's expected to happen over the next week until the 141 hour mark, where the European model is developing tropical storm Bonnie or subtropical storm Bonnie, we need to take a look at what's happening right now. And we do see that right now we do have that large heat wave going on throughout the midwestern portion of the United States, but along the northeast we do see this mid-latitude cyclone that's bringing a strong northerly flow that's keeping temperatures cooler, and not only that, it's bringing that jet stream further southward. So we are seeing that moisture move along this jet stream, and a portion of some of this moisture is expected to develop into an upper level low, as an upper level low is expected to develop off of this low pressure system, off the excess moisture of this mid-latitude cyclone on the southern side. As you can see right here, there's going to be a very pronounced jet stream dip, and there's going to be an area where the pressure will be just low enough in the upper levels of the atmosphere that we will see a portion of this moisture cut off from the jet stream and pretty much become its own independent upper level low, which will lead to which will lead to our next potential tropical disturbance developing. Because as you can see, as this mid-latitude cyclone moves northeastward, this jet stream dip or this upper level low won't. You don't really see it right now, but if I were to continue to move even forward, we do see that an upper level low develops right around the 4 to 5 day mark, where we do see this low pressure system cut off from the mid-latitude cyclone, which pretty much dissipate at this time, and more importantly cut off from the jet stream. So as a result, we do have this upper level low that's pretty much meandering just off the east coast and doesn't really have a strong steering current, so it's gonna just stay here for quite a while. And as a result of this upper level low and this jet stream dip, we're gonna see a portion of this moisture from this next trough move southward. And since this upper level low is located in this area, it's gonna attempt to move into where this air pressure is lower, as low pressure systems, or especially weak low pressure systems, typically tend to move into areas where the pressure is also very low, and the pressure is going to be low right around where this upper level low will be located. So we're going to see a portion of this energy move further southward associated with this trough, and that will lead to some convection occurring just off the southeast coast for potentially our next tropical disturbance to develop, and potentially tropical storm Bonnie, as you see right here. So while the European model is developing somewhat of, I'd say, a tropical storm at this point, the GFS model isn't necessarily agreeing with that, because if we were to take a look at the GFS model, while the GFS model is showing that it does expect a portion of this moisture associated with this mid-latitude cyclone to move southward into the mid-Atlantic states, and even a low pressure system does develop, the GFS model isn't expecting as strong of a low pressure system, and it isn't moving as far south for it to have much time over water to develop, or warmer water at that, because the low pressure system isn't expected to move any further southward than Virginia, based on what the GFS model is saying, which definitely does limit its potential in developing, because of course the water temperatures are a lot cooler closer to the northeast, and also it's going to have a lot less time over water and not a large area where it could really strengthen over this small area of water before it gets steered away by the strong upper level winds. So but what does raise certainty is that at least both computer models are expecting a low pressure system to develop off the east coast. What's really the bigger question is where exactly that low pressure system will be located, because that will be key in determining if Tropical Storm Bonnie does develop out of this. And also it really depends on it really all depends also on the amount of wind shear, which definitely could change between now and 5 days. We definitely need to keep all that in mind headed into next week. But taking a look at the amount of dry air to really determine if this does have a good chance of developing, you see that the GFS model is expecting quite a bit of moisture from this trough to move southward. However, associated with this upper level low, there's a lot of dry air, but at the same time, this upper level low could help this low pressure system because it gives an area where all that air that's risen aloft could sink in this area, which does allow more convection to occur surrounding the low pressure system. But at the same time, the upper level low could bring more dry air around center circulation, which could inhibit it, but it might not necessarily inhibit it if this upper level low is at least cold enough to where it could maybe get some energy associated with instability and baroclinic instability. So at that point, it won't be entirely a tropical storm. It'll be considered a subtropical low pressure system. So but we need to just wait and see how cold the temperatures are associated with this upper level low. Of course, we're now entering the later part of June, so it's not like we're gonna see any sort of extratropical cyclone that you'd see in October or November, when we do see the temperatures really get cool around upper level lows like this. But there could at least be maybe just enough instability to where it could develop despite the dry air associated with this upper level low. And that's what the European model is forecasting. If I were to show you guys where this low pressure system develops, you see that at its peak intensity, based on what the European model is stating, look at how much dry air is pretty much surrounding this storm. And it's typical during the early part of the hurricane season during the month of June that we do see tropical storms that are very lopsided when it comes to the amount of moisture on each side. So it isn't anything unusual. So this definitely could develop despite the existence of dry air, especially if there is baroclinic influences involved, which is possible with a colder upper level low, but we just have to wait and see. And another thing that won't necessarily go in its favor is the amount of wind shear, because the wind shear, of course, when you're right next to an upper level low, it does become strong. And look at how strong this wind shear is over this low pressure system. However, it might have a chance still of developing, because for one thing is that the winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere will move sort of the same direction as the winds in the upper levels, because of course I've been talking to you guys about that pronounced jet stream dip, and that jet stream dip is bringing a strong northerly flow. So despite the upper level winds coming from being very strong in the upper levels from a northerly direction, it's also moving the same. It also could move the same direction as winds along the surface, which pretty much does lighten the wind shear a bit, and it does lighten it quite a bit once this storm begins to move northward, because you see that the upper level winds will move northward, which is very similar to what you're going to see along the surface, where the winds will primarily come from the south. I meant to say, not from north to south. So despite the stronger wind shear and despite the dry air, this still does have a possibility of developing. It definitely will be inhibited by this wind shear and dry air, at least when it comes to of peak intensity, like I don't expect anything close to a hurricane. I think the most likely scenario associated with the low pressure system is maybe a weak to moderate tropical storm, but that's still definitely something to keep in mind because that could bring a strong rip current risk along the east coast and maybe bring gusty winds if this low pressure system develops close enough along the coast, and it could bring a prolonged period of rain, which even if this tropical disturbance does not necessarily develop into tropical storm Bonnie, we're still going to see the existence of this upper level low that's going to be off the coast for quite a while, and that could bring some rainy conditions for quite a while along the east coast. So it's definitely something to pay close attention to. A lot of questions regarding the forecast. We just really need to see how much energy will move southward, and of course how strong this upper level low will be, because that will be another key. Because if this upper level low is a little bit too weak, then we're less likely to see enough energy move far enough south to where it does have a higher possibility of moving over the warmer waters and developing. But if it were a bit stronger, then we'd see a stronger northerly flow in the upper levels and also along the surface, to where this moisture associated with this trough will move further southward and have a higher probability of developing. So we just need to wait and see how strong this upper level low will be, because I think that will be key in determining if we do see tropical storm Bonnie next week or not. But at least along the east coast, at least just to be aware. Like I said, I don't expect this to be necessarily anything extremely major, but it definitely could maybe bring some gusty winds and some heavy rain at times along the coast if this does end up developing, and of course a high rip current risk. And unfortunately, a lot of people, it's rip currents are one of the leading causes of deaths in the United States, which is definitely very saddening because it's one of the most preventable causes of deaths, where all you need to do is just stay out of the water if there's strong rip currents, because it definitely could save your life. So make sure to pay close attention to that along the east coast. So still a high amount of uncertainty. We need to see how far south or north this moves, but I'll make sure to update you guys over the next several days regarding the probability this low pressure or tropical disturbance does have a developing. At this point, it seems likely there will be a tropical disturbance just off the east coast, but the main question is if it will develop into tropical storm Bonnie, which is uncertain at this point. But at least be aware, or at least be prepared for a chance of a prolonged period of rain, because that could happen whether this tropical disturbance develops or not as a result of an upper level low that's going to meander along the east coast. Now, take a look at the water temperatures. You see that pretty much anywhere north of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, the sea surface temperatures are below the 80-degree threshold. Now, this necessarily doesn't completely prevent the chance that this develops north of Cape Hatteras, because there's still that possibility that this upper level low will be cold enough to where it'll create somewhat of an unstable environment for a subtropical system to develop, or at least a formable low pressure system to where it could maybe cause impacts. It isn't necessarily out the question. And another thing is that this maybe you don't necessarily need the sea surface temperatures to be exactly at 80 degrees, because we do see some tropical storms develop in 75 to 80 degree water right around the high 70s. So there's still that possibility tropical storm Bonnie, or at least subtropical storm Bonnie, does develop north of Cape Hatteras. But of course, if it does want a really good chance of developing, it definitely needs to move a lot further southward for it to have enough convection, or a high amount of convection, to really get enough thunderstorm activity and lower the pressure enough along the center circulation for a tropical storm to develop. So we're definitely going to need to pay attention to see how far this energy associated with this trough moving through Canada will move to really determine if tropical storm Bonnie will develop or not. Now, take a look at what the National Hurricane Center is stating at this time. in the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook, you see that it isn't the National Hurricane Center is not expecting any new tropical cyclones to develop, but still don't underestimate the potential of a tropical storm developing next week, because the tropical disturbance I was just talking to you guys about goes a little bit beyond the 5-day mark, so we might not necessarily see it be shown on the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook until a little bit later, maybe as early as tomorrow, or maybe even a little later than that, depending on how fast this tropical disturbance moves into the East Coast. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. Now, in terms of my forecast of the possibilities of where this next potential tropical cyclone could develop, it could develop anywhere within the cone right here. So as far north as maybe the southern coast of New England, or as far south as the just off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. So we definitely need to pay attention to how far south this moves to really determine if this will develop. So I'll make sure to keep you guys updated over the next several days regarding the chance that this tropical storm does develop. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more about the content, and I hope you guys all have a great day.